Welcome. I know we're starting late. Sorry about that. Um, I get asked, I'm sorry, what?
Great refreshment.
Oh, yes. Yes, great refreshments. I thought you were going to thank them. Okay, okay. So my first announcement is not really an announcement. It's just a visual here of the meetings. And there's our address, the times we meet. It's the second Monday of the month. And socializing at 5:30. You know what socializing is, right? Okay. So, and this is the First Church of the Nazarene that you are in. And it's a wonderful place to have this meeting because it's so nice and big and open. I want to also tell you about CPR. Have I told you about CPR before? Does everybody know? That's the mission. That's Conradina's mission, and Florida Native Plant Society's also. CPR stands for conservation, preservation, and restoration of the native plant community. They're getting ready to change it. Now, after I found my CPR, they're getting ready to change it. I was like, every time I fix something or every time I think I've got, like 3 letters I can actually go to and I don't have to worry about it, it's in the brain now. They change it. I was like,
I'm with you.
I don't know what it's going to be, but we'll see. Probably in a month, they're going to tell us. Okay. So Carol, do hospitality
Thank you so much.
first.
We had a ton of, see, I don't even need one.
I know. I don't either.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks everyone for coming, because we do have a great speaker coming up pretty soon. But yes, I am thanking all of the people that volunteered to bring in that wonderful meal and beverages. Can we give them a round of applause? And I do, of course, have the next sign-up sheet out there on the table. So if you would like to participate in next week's, next month's meeting, it's with Patrick Mugen, and he's gonna talk about the night lights on plants. It's kind of fascinating topic, but we really appreciate everybody coming tonight.
It's called Dark Sky, isn't it?
We have night lights on plants.
Oh, okay.
Is the title we have.
Okay.
The other thing I do want to thank everybody for, and I would love to have each person stand up as I give out their name. Because we were at the Downtown Botanical Festival yesterday, or no.
Saturday.
The day before, it was on Saturday. I barely know what day it is, but yes, it was on Saturday. And we had a great turnout, and it had some wonderful volunteers, just so spectacular. Martha, Richard, myself, Carl, Frank, Dave, Sarah, Sumya, Doug, Karen, Marilyn, Lisa, and Bijan. Woohoo!
Woo!
Really appreciate it. We've had 114 hours of volunteer time. So
Wow.
really appreciate that as well. And I missed somebody. Amy.
Yes, right there,
Amy.
Amy.
Amy was there, and but she had to go that. I have you right here. Okay, well, thank you so much, guys. A lot of good things to do and a lot of great things to learn when you come to the Native Plant Society meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We are going to have elections next month. It's May. And I'm not going to say it's every 2 years, but the president changes and a lot of the board changes. And the nominations are open for board members, blah, blah, and vice president. And it's possible to self-nominate. So if you feel that you would like to join the board, come and see me or any one of the board members. Or you can go online. Luke's going to put the board make sure the board application is online. We're holding elections in May. Yeah, go to the website for the application. Okay, Richard, where are you? Oh,
Okay. Well, it's a nice crowd here tonight and really appreciate everybody showing up. Two things I'd like to quickly discuss. You probably all noticed the new mulch and stuff out in front of the church here. Yeah. That is one of our community service grants that we do for various plantings, the native plantings. And this is actually phase 2. It will be a fruit, farm and food forest, I guess is what they're calling it, and native plantings as well. And the landscaping was done this last week. We're going to need some help planting the plants that are coming up over the next 3 months. So I have a form out in the lobby. If you are interested in helping, it doesn't have to be every time, but I'll send out emails when we're going to do these things. And I would be very happy to have people here. Lots of hands make short work. And also, if you have fruit trees or are good at gardening for food crops, I'm sure the congregation here would like some assistance in helping with this food forest. So, amen. Thank you, Pastor Joel.
there he is.
So, and the next thing I'd like to talk about.
And herbs.
Yeah.
Ask him about herbs.
Oh, herbs.
Yeah,
plants,
donation of herbs.
things like that. Well, if you sign up with the work group, I will notify you directly when we're going to have these work days. It'll start after May 9th because the KBB Secret Garden Tour is May 9th and our house is on that, so I'm kind of not able to do the other things until then. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the plants that you saw when you come in here is grown by a group of Conradina members. And we would like to increase the size of that group because we're giving more and more plants away all the time. If you're interested in learning how to propagate natives, if you're interested in just helping even weed the pots and things like that as they grow, please sign up in the plant propagation folder out there. And again, I'll get in touch with you and we can talk about what we can do, and we'll probably meet a few times and discuss exchanging seeds and cuttings and things like that. But that would be very helpful to get a few more people in on this. It's a lot of fun and it's very rewarding. That's it.
Wait, don't go away.
I knew you'd have me back.
You have to introduce Mike.
I am happy to introduce Mike.
Thank you.
Many of you know the Fakahatchee Strand, one of the most remarkable things in Florida. Would be long term. But you might be surprised to learn this is kind of what we do know about us. One of those things that 30 years waiting to waste deep water, cataloging the secrets, and falling in love with it. Mike Owen has served as the Park Biologist at Fakahatchee Strand Preserve State Park for 3 decades until his retirement 2023. During his career, he cataloged ghost orchids, helped rescue giant bear plants from the brink of local extinction, monitored bromeliad weevil invasion mile by mile as it occurred, and quietly outmaneuvered poachers who were after the Strand's rarest treasures. He also served as a guide to author Susan Orlean when she was researching her book, The Orchid Thief. So in a way, he's a bit famous. Mike is the kind of biologist who watches plant for 15 years just to see what it becomes. He talks about duckweed, bladderwort, and ghost orchid blooms like it's the most extraordinary thing he's ever seen. Mike was the speaker of the first Conradina meeting I attended in 2012. His enthusiasm and exuberance reeled me in as a member right there and then. For those of us who love native orchids, that kind of dedication speaks for itself. So please join me in welcoming Michael Owen.
Is this guy recording?
I'm going to try this earpiece and see if it works, or I might be too loud. Yeah. Well, we'll see. If I'm too loud, we'll have to move this away. Is that good? Okay. I have not done with the earpiece yet. This is my first. Thanks, Richard. Wow, how do you live up to that? That's incredible. Thank you so much. This is great to be here. I was taking a picture just a few minutes ago to see how many people showed up. I don't know what the number is, but this is great. You're going to get even more energy than normal because I do pour out a lot of energy, especially when you got a crowd this size. This is awesome. My wife, Donna, and I, on a personal note, met now 20 years ago, March 25th, 2006, on a swamp walk with the Florida Master Naturalist Program here in Brevard County. When Heather Stapleton organized a group to Fakahatchee Strand, Donna got the last slot. We hold it to about 12 people in that slot, and she got the last one. And so that's how we met, was at Fakahatchee, and that's now 20 years ago, March 25, 2006. Boy, does time fly. And Donna was already into native plants, and I think she told me, man, with this biologist out here in the swamp, he's so loud, I am never going to hear a bird. She's right. You don't hear that many birds when I'm out there. I'm looking for plants and documenting them, and people are taking pictures. Donna will be doing the advancing of the slides, otherwise it will take me way too long. So she keeps me on schedule. Oh, well, she tries. So we'll start with that. Fascinating Facets of the Fakahatchee Strand. I love that title. I hope it lives up to the billing. And Fakahatchee is pretty fascinating to me, and it just hasn't dimmed yet in all the years I've been there. I really need to change the first slide to emeritus because I'm no longer the park biologist, past park biologist. I start out with charismatic megafauna. This is what holds conservation. You guys know this is plant people. Plants always, what do they call it? Plant blindness. People don't even see plants. If they see an animal at all, it's the charismatic megafauna. That's a whale shark. It's so big, that's a fish that's like a whale. They get up to 40 feet long, the size of a school bus. Those are the things that carry the weight for conservation. The next slide, Donna, will show you another charismatic animal. If you don't get excited about conservation after seeing a baby panther, I can't reach you. That is as charismatic as they come. We got this from Ralph Arnold. Let us have that picture. Ralph Arwood, yes. So we start off with the charismatic megafauna. Now we'll transition to the charismatic place that is known as Fakahatchee Strand Preserve State Park. It is the largest unit in the Florida Park Service, 85,000 acres, and it is the largest strand swamp in the world. The reason I can say that is strand swamps only occur in South to Central Florida. They're basically elongated channels, shallow valleys. They're erosion channels in the limestone that have been eroding for 4,500 years by naturally occurring acids and rainfall. A very gentle slope to the landscape, only about 6 inches per mile, downstream to the 10,000 Islands estuary. And the panther refuge is north of that interstate. I guess the pointer, if you want to do that, that's I-75 or Alligator Alley. They converted Alligator Alley, State Road 84, I believe, into I-75 in 1989. And they put in a lot of wildlife crossings and a lot of water crossings too, a lot more culverts to allow the flow to come through that roadbed a lot better than it used to. So it's still not perfectly restored, but at least there's a lot better sheet flow than there was. To the right is State Road 29, or to the east. East of that road is Big Cypress National Preserve. 740,000 acres of the Big Cypress Swamp is preserved within the Big Cypress National Preserve. To the west of Fakahatchee, you can see those 4 parallel lines. Those are canals. That used to be the Southern Golden Gate Estates. They put in the 4 parallel canals, dropping the water table by 6 to 8 feet. That's equivalent to lifting the land up 6 to 8 feet. So major hydrologic and therefore natural community changes ensued. The drilling of those canals started about 1963, ending in 1970. That was the easternmost of the canals. That one was the first to be plugged. By the year 2006, we had the easternmost plug. That's the one that's boundary with now Picayune Strand State Forest to the west and Fakahatchee Strand Preserve State Park to the east. Now that we've plugged 3 of those 4 canals, the restoration of that hydro period, or the hydrological patterns, which is all about hydro period, the number of days that the ground is saturated. That's really what dictates or determines plant species communities. And that's near historic according to the models now, at least with inside Fakahatchee Strand. And then these are my favorite habitats. This is a potash pond apple slough. It is loaded with epiphytes. I call it festooned. It is festooned with epiphytes. Most of these are bromeliads. The vast majority of the epiphytes in Fakahatchee are bromeliads or air plants in the bromeliad family. Fakahatchee is the bromeliad capital of the United States. We have 14 native species, 10 tillandsias, 3 catopsis, 1 guzmania. Those are all guzmania. So whenever we're walking through the swamp and it's filled with sloughs, filled with guzmania like this, I tell everybody, okay, guys, we are now guzmaniacs. You convert the genus name into the word guzmaniac. So we have a lot of fun being silly out there because of all the oxygen. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I also lived this. I had to review where I got this from. Gene Craighead George. This book is incredible, the Everglades region. I love this picture because it shows this is how it all happens. It all comes down to topography, relative ground elevation. That's what determines plant species communities, because that's determined by a hydrology gradient. The hydro period, the number of days in a year that the ground is saturated with water. That determines plant communities. And you can see that on this graph. The marl sand below, the limestone below that, deposited over millions of years. That's the limestone under salt water. Then the marl sand and quartz, and then the muck. The source of that muck is 4,500 years of winter. These are deciduous trees, bald cypress, potash, pond apple, willows, maples. They're deciduous trees, so every year they're dropping their leaves and needles for 4,500 years. The reason that muck builds up 3 to 6 feet deep, the black part there, acting like a sponge, wicking water up like wick. It's wicking moisture up through the muck during the dry months of April and May. The driest months are April and May. The rainy season, May to October, May 1 to October 31. 75% of the annual rainfall in Southwest Florida, the Big Cypress Swamp, occurs May 1 to October 31. The other 25% of your annual rainfall is the other 6 months. So it's a tide. It's a high tide around September of fresh water and a low tide around April or May. The plants and animals are adapted to and really constrained by the seasonally fluctuating water levels. High in September, bottoming out in April and May. So that's what it reminds me to tell you guys, is that fluctuation, seasonally fluctuating water levels. Ray Porter came in 1997, 50 years after he took this photograph, of the logging of the Fakahatchee Strand. 1943 to 1953, the world's largest strand swamp, I forgot to tell you that, the Fakahatchee Strand is the largest strand swamp in the world, was being logged out and finished about 1954. We would have had that if it weren't for we had ivory-billed woodpeckers. We would have probably still had some ivory-billed woodpeckers, but we logged out the swamp right out from under them. It was World War II that really began the demand for the timber. They called it the wood eternal. The bald cypress is very resistant to decomposition under wet conditions, so the U.S. Navy needed bald cypress for the hulls of minesweepers, also for decks of aircraft carriers and PT boats. That's only up to 1945. The logging continued till it ended in 1954. It's a finite amount of trees. These trees were 3 to 6 feet in diameter and over 100 feet tall. There's only so many of them. We mined them. It wasn't sustainable forestry, it was mining. The only ones that are left are whatever the conservationists intervene in time. And that's what we have a little bit, 215 acres of old growth left. We started out with about 40,000 acres, and now we have probably less than 1%. But Ray Porter came in and donated these pictures to let us know what it was like during the logging era. You can see the height of those royal palms, over 100 feet tall. They were not after the royal palms. Just to quickly go through some of the good stuff, ferns. This is a hand fern. I love these things hanging down like a hand. That's Ophioglossum palmatum, like a palmate. And it's got spores, reproduces by spores. And they're circumtropical. They're even in the Seychelles in the Indian Ocean. It's incredible. State listed endangered. Another endangered fern we have is the eared spleenwort. And that has a little earlobe at the base of the pinnae, or the base of the little fern. And it's a bicolored rachis, green on top and chestnut brown below. It's really cool. And that's endangered too. So whenever we find these things out there, it's a big touchdown. So the GPS comes out and the notes come out. And that's what we're doing. And Donna, you call it a treasure hunt or emerald or jewels. We're looking for jewels out there, and that's what we're looking for, is the rare. Something about the human mind, we like rarity. We're not going to go out and look for a bald cypress today. That's just too easy to find. And we're not going to go out and look for Elvis Presley or the ivory-billed woodpecker. Too difficult, virtually impossible. What we like? In between. So we go for ghost orchids. Very difficult to find, but not impossible. So that's the holy grail for us plant fanatics. We're always looking for things like the ghost orchid. This is another one, the tailed strap fern or the wavy strap fern. That's a tropical fern. All these epiphytic plants are tropical in their origin. They were brought here, carried here in the form of spores in the case of ferns, also on birds as they would migrate back up from the tropics during spring migration. But hurricanes would hop skip them up too, the spores of ferns or the seeds of orchids or bromeliads, peperomias. This is the rarest of our ferns, the narrowly strapped fern. And we've only known, I think, 4 places of this. Some of them are dropping. One of the sites is stable and another one is going up. Overall, though, it's down in the last 15 years. It looks a lot like shoestring fern, but that's wider. No, that's narrower. This is a little wider than shoestring fern and a lot rarer. We're always looking for that. If we ever find that, that gets a waypoint and we count the exact number and how many fronds are in each plant. That's a super rare one, at least in the United States, South Florida only. It may be fairly common in the true tropics. And this is Dennis Giardina. He was the manager back in 2006 and 7 and loves bromeliads. He's the one that said yes during our giant air plant survey, and we got to work with Naples Botanical Gardens and Selby Botanical Gardens, Sarasota, to try to rescue some of the giant air plants from, as Richard said, local extinction. The project did work. We just kicked the can down the road. We didn't solve the problem, but at least now there's a lot of genetic diversity represented by about, oh gosh, we saved 140 plants. Each plant makes 10 to 25,000 seeds. So 130 plants survived, got them back out in Fakahatchee. Even at 10,000 each, that would be 1.3 million seeds. So because of that collaboration, 1.3 million seeds were released back into the Fakahatchee, and many of those plants have now recruited. So it's just a way of trying to help get that diversity to the future. This is Tillandsia fasciculata. Whenever people ask me a plant out on the swamp walks, I always try to tell them the Latin name first. I worked so hard to try to learn those Latin names, and now they change them. So I can understand where you're coming from with the CPR change. And now they change those. But so I try to learn the common name too. The common names are more stable. But the Latin names of this one, Tillandsia fasciculata, or the stiff-leaved or cardinal air plant, is state listed endangered because of that Mexican bromeliad weevil. And we've lost about 95% of the giant air plants at Fakahatchee. The weevil loved them. It was a smorgasbord. And we lost probably about 85 or 90% of these. Now, we had so many to begin with. There's still thousands of those, but there used to be 3.5 to 4.5 million in Fakahatchee alone. Now there might be 300,000 or 400,000. We have about 10 or 15% left. So it's like the giants. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. Fakahatchee was the largest place, the largest number of these bromeliads anywhere in the United States. So it was a smorgasbord for this non-native weevil, the Mexican bromeliad weevil. When it got there, it was just a smorgasbord. Nothing was going to stop it. And so the population of weevils boomed and the bromeliad populations crashed. And now they're at a 10% low, and we think they're just going to oscillate. They're not going to go extinct. They're just going to be at a much lower level than they were before. This is very interesting. This is Tillandsia usneoides, the Spanish moss. It truly is a flowering plant. It's a bromeliad. It doesn't look like anyone's hanging on those trees, but it's really just another epiphytic bromeliad, Tillandsia, but it's usneoides. It means it looks like Spanish moss, looks like usnea, which is what do they call it, old man's beard, Tillandsia usnea. It's a lichen. Usnea is a lichen. And so usneoides means looks like. So it looks like usnea, but it's a blooming or flowering plant. This is the floating seeds. I remember one group, I was trying to tell them, well, this is good for wind-mediated seed dispersal. And there was a lady up front during the swamp walk, and she was trying to figure out, what did this biologist just say? And then she got it, and she realized, oh, you just mean windblown. And I said, yeah, that's what I mean, but I'm a biologist. We got to say wind-mediated seed dispersal. Isn't that cool? No, it's just windblown. She was not going to work with me. But that's what these are. They're just they're parachutes. The bromeliads have parachute-like seeds. And that's how they get around. This is really cool, protocarnivorous. This is Catopsis bergeroniana. It is protocarnivorous. It's not truly carnivorous because it doesn't make the enzymes that digest the insects that get trapped in that cup of water. It'll hold like up to a quart of water. They can grow way up high, even beyond the leaf fall, the leaf litter, because they get their organics from some of the fallen insects that fall into that water. But because they don't make the enzymes, they're not considered truly carnivorous. They're they're on their way. Proto-carnivorous. What happens is the plant absorbs through trichomes in the leaves, that basal rosette leaves, it forms a little tank. That's why they call these bromeliads that hold water tank bromeliads. They're little puddles of water, fish tanks. But they're able to absorb the nutrients from the decomposition from bacteria and fungi and protozoa up in that cup. So it's not enzymes, but they're taking some of the organics from the bacterial decomposition that's happening in that cup of water. Proto-carnivorous, Catopsis bergeroniana. That's a catopsis, right? Not Tillandsia, catopsis. And there's two of them together. These get very large, very long plants, growing way up high, and they're like talcum powder. They're real powdery. This is Barb on the left, Bobby on the right. Bobby was our PhD botanist. I learned a lot of botany from Bobby. I had 6 years of overlap, 97 to 2003. Once you are able to work with a person like Bobby, that's where your learning curve skyrockets, because I didn't know any of that. That's right, I meant to bring Bobby's book. Bobby has finished his, what do I call it, magnum opus or whatever? Finished this gigantic book on the hardwoods of Southwest Florida, focusing on Koreshan State Park. Of course, that includes all the hardwoods at Fakahatchee too. I meant to bring it today. He had to self-publish, so all he's trying to do is sell all of them back so he can at least get his money back. He won't make any profit, but that's one of his lifetime achievements. It's incredible. I'll bring it next time.
Up here.
Yeah.
Trees and shrubs.
It's trees.
Pictures. That's it's big.
It's incredible. Yeah, I meant to bring it, so I got to bring it next month. This is Mel Finn. They call him the father of Fakahatchee. Mel Finn, if it wasn't for Mel Finn, I would have never had my 30-year job as Park Biologist and one of the most incredible naturalists in the United States, the Fakahatchee Strand. This is where I get a little bit emotional. Mel Finn took it upon himself to catch the Faka habit for the first time. 1961, Franklin Adams took him into the Fakahatchee, and that was it. He caught on fire for Fakahatchee. He helped start the Nature Conservancy in Miami area. This guy was an attorney. And he would pester and bug anybody that could possibly save the Fakahatchee Strand. It didn't happen in his lifetime. But what he did is what allowed it to happen just a short 3 or 4 years later. Everyone, they gave a memorial to him in 1999. It is still there today at the office. So every time I walk by it, I had to say, well, Finn, thanks to Mel Finn, thanks to you, I have this job again today. I'm going to do the best I can every day. And every one of them told me separately, if it weren't for Mel Finn, you would never have this job. And we would not, as a society, have this place. He is the person that really galvanized the support to preserve a cut-over swamp. Remember, the Fakahatchee was totally logged out. The only part not logged out was privately owned by the Norris family, Lester Norris. And that was 215, I believe, or is it 315? It's 215 acres of old growth virgin bald cypress trees, and that's where we have a boardwalk. It's incredible. But the vast majority of that strong swamp was logged out for World War II. Remember that? Decks of aircraft carriers, hulls of minesweepers. Also for pickle barrels, stadium seats, shingles, and coffins. We logged out the world's largest strand swamp after World War II ended in August of 45. It went all the way to 54 before logging ended because it's mining. It was a constant, a finite supply of old trees. These trees were 300 to 500 years old. I'm 6 feet. Some of the trees were greater than 6 feet in diameter. Bald cypress can reach 135 feet, not so much in South Florida because we have hurricanes. Frequency of hurricanes is too frequent. And so they knocked the upper 25 feet off. So they get about 100, 110 feet tall. There was a lot of lumber, and it was 1 million board feet per week for a decade. That's the amount of volume Fakahatchee had, the largest strain of the world, complete with ivory-billed woodpeckers. We had ivory bills in the upper end at the Panther Refuge in the late 30s and early 40s. It's incredible. So Mel Finn is the guy, the father of the Fakahatchee Strand. He died in 1971, 1 year after he took a group of people in 1970 of April, and they all decided Mel was right, and they will help to preserve it. And they started that in 1974, 3 years after Mel passed away. So never got to see it happen, but he caught on fire for the place, and because of Mel Finn, we all get to go and enjoy this incredible natural wonder that we call Fakahatchee. Fakahatchee means muddy water, muddy creek, or hunter's paradise. For me, it's Shangri-La. It was incredible, but muddy water. It's a meandering rivers. There's streams, those sloughs of pond apple and pawpash trees. I kind of like this quote from Walter Buswell, 1937. It is incredible when you spend a day inside Fakahatchee. Some of the other parks don't do it for you anymore. Fakahatchee is so wild. It's just incredible. When you come out of it, you want more. And that's why we call it the Faka habit. This is our largest swamp lake. It's a natural community known by FNA. It's listed by the Florida Natural Areas Inventory. Swamp lake. They're too deep for trees. And it's alligator action. Every March, April, and May, the wallowing of the alligators as the water table drops, they're wallowing out these solution hole features and creating and maintaining gator holes or swamp lakes. It's actually a natural community. But that natural community would succeed over time without the activity of the biology. The alligator, the keeper of the Everglades. The alligator is our version of the beaver. It is the engineer of the Everglades. It engineers that topographic low. Those low areas where you don't even have trees. The pond apple pawpaw sloughs are shallower than that, where trees can get started during droughts, especially. That's 5 acres. And I forgot to tell you, every one of those little slashes, the end there value, 214. Those are alligators. Fakahatchee has 94 swamp lakes. The Panther Refuge has another 4 or 5. There's almost 100 swamp lakes. If there's 20 gators per lake, that's 2,000 gators, and I'm being very conservative. There's probably 5,000 to 10,000 alligators out there protecting and maintaining the hydrology and the topography of the Fakahatchee Strand. I say protecting too because would-be poachers are going to think a little bit longer when you've got dragons out there. We have dragons in the moat, and that's why Fakahatchee retains so much of its incredible natural biodiversity. It's partly due to fear. You got to be careful out there. You don't go alone. You go in a little group, and we're careful. We're all watching out for each other. This is the eastern coral snake. That's just an incredible animal. You just got to throw that in there. Every show has to have a coral snake. And I did get to see at least one. You know, they're actually more common than we believe. They're fossorial. They're burrowing under the leaves, and they come out more at night. I saw one once. I was going to get a plant voucher specimen, went into the ditch, stepped right in the mud, boom, coral snake, right next to me. And I see the red touching yellow. I thought, oh, that's a coral. Let me just sit still. And then he just moved on. I never got to see the head. It was about a 2-footer. That was it. They're actually a lot more common than we know. That's the only one I saw at Fakahatchee in 30 winters. The next one's the eastern diamondback rattlesnake. Quick story on this. The eastern diamondback rattlesnake was eaten for many years by wild pigs or hogs. They eat any snake. Their fur is so thick, they got the big tusk. Snakes are done. When we brought back panthers in 1995, 8 cougars from West Texas were brought here from Texas. Females, all females, to breed with the male panthers because they were on the vortex of extinction. There was an estimated 30 panthers in the wild in all of South Florida in 1994. So by 1995, they brought all females, 8 of them. 1 was shot, 2 were killed on the roads within 2 or 3 years. So in 1995, 8 female West Texas cougars. By about 2000, those 5 remaining female cougars bred with male panthers, and things got better. The population estimate went to 50. Within those 5 years, from 95 to 2000, the diamondback rattlesnake must have started making a comeback. We didn't notice it yet for a few more years, 2008. So it took another 8 years for us to really notice the uptick of diamondback rattlesnakes. And it's all because of the apex predator, the Florida panther, wiped out the pigs, the wild hogs. The panthers would never touch an adult wild pig. They're too dangerous. They could hurt a panther or kill it. Because once a panther gets injured, that's it. So they can't be injured, at least not severely. And by a pig, you're going to get hurt pretty bad. So what happened was they would eat the little ones. The panthers would eat the piglets. The female pig is going to stay on the ground. They're going to grab one, and up the tree they go. So after a few years, the pigs, the old ones, died. And the young ones, they couldn't produce fast enough because the panthers kept kicking up their population. So by about 2000, the estimate was 50. After that, it went up even higher. The estimate today can be as high as 200, maybe 225. I don't know about those numbers, but I would say probably 150 to 200 would be a good range. That's for all of South Florida. The estimate in 94, remember, was 30. Now it's probably about 150 or so. Still highly endangered, but just an example of when you bring back an apex predator, That wipes out the exotic animal, the wild pig or the hog, and then you bring back the eastern diamondback rattlesnake. Also the rough green snake. These things are incredible. Beautiful, green on top, yellow belly. You'll see them on that white road. Jamestown Drive is white crushed lime rock. And we didn't see enough of these. In my 30 years there, I think I saw 24. So again, they're much more common than that. You just have to see them on the road because in the grasses, you just don't see them. And then this is a green tree frog. You have to have a green tree frog. Green tree frogs on every program, even if it's about plants, because they're just too cute. Karen's always talking about how cute they are. And I told Karen, you know what? I think I got it, Karen. Green tree frog. If you're a frog and you're a green tree frog, here's the criteria. You gotta be cute. You're not allowed to be a green tree frog unless you are. So you always throw one of those in. This was a Florida box turtle that survived one of our prescribed fires. Many of the turtles survive the fires if they're box turtles because they know to dig. I think they smell the smoke, so they know to dig into the mud. I never came across a box turtle. Wait a minute, nope. I came across only one time 2 box turtles that was killed by a fire. They were up on a saw palmetto hammock, and that burns hot. And they were only about 6 or 8 feet from grasses that did not burn. They were up on the saw. That was the only time. And that was in 30 years of inspecting fires, wild and prescribed. I only saw that happen once, and that was 2 box turtles on the same hammock of saw palmetto. All the other fires, wild and prescribed, the box turtles get under. They get into the mud. I'm assuming it's because they smell the smoke. The aquatic turtles do not. Like striped mud turtles, they can't get out of the way fast enough. That's an aquatic turtle. So if they're caught out into our prairies, many of them would get burned over. So fires do kill some of the wildlife, but we're only burning a minute fraction of the habitat on any given year. And the whole fire is to maintain the habitat quality for the plants and the animals. This is one of the Guzmanias, but it's the striped one, the candy striped one, or variegated, I guess. And it's got that salmon pink color when it's blooming, and that blooms mainly in June, July, August, summertime. So you got to be out there in the heat of summer. This was one of my favorite bromeliads, Tillandsia flexuosa. It's flexuous like a tornado. And it's got a really neat flower, a pinkish kind of a flower. This is our rarest bromeliad, nodding catopsis. It's found nowhere else in the United States. In the tropics, it's a lot more common. But up here in the United States, the only place you can find it in the wild is Fakahatchee Strand. It really is functioning. Fakahatchee is such a large swamp with so much multi-layered canopy, deep valley of limestone and all that muck and all that water and humidity protect from frost and drying out and protects it from fire too, that it's mimicking a tropical rainforest, a frost-free tropical rainforest. So I try to call Fakahatchee Florida's Amazon. I call it Florida's version of the Amazon. Now, but when I say that, I don't mean to exaggerate the biodiversity of Fakahatchee. Fakahatchee is 85,000 acres, and our entire plant list is approaching 800 species. 700 are native. There's a tree in the Amazon that could equal that number of species in the 85,000 acres of Fakahatchee. That's the difference between the true tropics of the Amazon and what I call Florida's Amazon. I'm just saying it's Florida's version. It cannot compete. One tree in the Amazon would equal our entire 85,000 acres preserve in species alone. So it's just Florida's version. And the reason I say that is most of these tropical plants, ferns, bromeliads, orchids, originated down there. They got here by birds and hurricanes. And they're able to survive because of water and canopy and muck. And that's just showing the inflorescence, how it nods downward. It's called nodding catopsis. I had a group out there once. They started singing nodding catopsis to the tune of Waltzing Matilda. You never know what you're going to get out there. It was kind of fun, though. Nodding catopsis. This used to be my favorite plant to take a picture of. It's Tillandsia pruinosa, or the fuzzy wuzzy air plant. Until Rick Cruz took a picture, I think on the next one. Was it Rick's picture, the next one? Oh, it's showing the highlight. Anyway, you can see how super fuzzy that is. Tillandsia pruinosa. It used to be only in Collier County, but now Will has found some in Lee County. So Collier and Lee County is the only place you can find them in the United States. Fuzzy wuzzy. There it is. That's the picture taken by Rick Cruz. That's what happens when you get a professional photographer. Ruined the fuzzy wuzzy for me. Because prior to this picture, I could always tell everybody, oh yeah, they'd say, Mike, that's a little out of focus. No, this is a fuzzy wuzzy. They look out of focus. But then Rick did this and took a perfectly focused picture of a fuzzy wuzzy air plant. So I don't have that excuse anymore, so I don't even try. The fuzzy wuzzle, state listed endangered. This is Heidi Aspen Rhodes collecting seeds from that Tillandsia flexuosa, the tornado. We were trying to collect as many seeds to preserve the botanical diversity or species genetic diversity from the bromeliads prior to the invasion of the Mexican bromeliad weevil. Some of that kind of collapsed, but we were all collaborating to try to make that happen. And a lot of that good stuff happens because of botanical gardens. Oh, that is the weevil. They were calling it the evil weevil. There's nothing evil about it. We brought it here. It came from Veracruz, Mexico on shipments of bromeliads from Veracruz into the port of Miami. It kept coming in here. And within about 15 years, they intercepted it 2 times a year, I believe. So we knew it was going to get here eventually. Finally, it did by 1989. It got into Fakahatchee by 2002, the bromeliad capital of the United States. And then by 2008, we started seeing problems. This is us doing the Guzmania. Let's see, we were trying to label these by numbers so we could document the impact of the weevil. But within a year or maybe 2, the impact wasn't from the weevil, it was a hurricane. So you do the best you can to monitor these sites, and there's always something out there. It's just amazing the different things that these plants and animals have to deal with out in the wild. This is my favorite habitat. That's why you see it sprinkled throughout the program here. Potash pond apple slough. Those are the 2 trees that can handle the extended hydro period and the water depth of a slough. It's S-L-O-U-G-H. Sloughs are seasonally flowing streams embedded within the matrix of the valley of a strand. Strands are shallow valleys. They're elongated channels. Shallow valleys that have been eroded over 4,500 years by naturally occurring acids like carbonic acid and rainfall. Remember the slope? 6 inches per mile. It's very slow, hydrostatic pressure. From the rainy season, May to October, 75% of your rainfall. So you get a big sheet flow that's coming through the Big Cypress Swamp physiographic region of the greater Everglades ecosystem. We're separate from the Everglades physiographically and hydrologically. The Everglades is basically a wetland that's not dominated by trees. That's a marsh. Also needs fire. It's counterintuitive. A wetland that needs fire? Yes. The Everglades is a marsh. It is not dominated by trees. It is punctuated by swamps. Wherever you see a tree island, if it's a hammock, that's a tree island with leafless tree snails. If it's a cypress dome, it's circular, and that's tree dominated with cypress trees, that's a swamp. Otherwise, if it's grasses, sedges, and rushes and catches on fire, that's a marsh. The Fakahatchee Strand is a strand swamp. The technical definition, 40%. If the tree canopy cover is 40% or greater, you're in a swamp. If it's less than that, it's something else. But marsh versus swamp. Also, the prairies along the edges of Fakahatchee Strand and the pine flatwoods need fire. So marshes, pine flatwoods, and the prairies, marl prairies, are fire dependent, not just fire adapted. They need the fire to maintain the habitat mosaic that boosts the botanical and zoological diversity. So it's all landscape ecology. And I'm doing this because it's topography. A few inches up, a few inches down, a totally, completely different plant community. So I love those sloughs. That's where the epiphytes are. This was Angela Miro, the World Orchid Conference 2008. She came out in 2006 and 2007, 3 different times, out in the swamp with me and Dennis. And she just got eaten up by the mosquitoes. She had mosquito nets, and it was a rough year, 6 and 7, and she kept coming back for more to get this picture, get enough pictures so she could do the artwork. So she paid her dues, and she did a tremendous job. The World Orchid Conference in Miami in 2008, Angela Miro. We have a picture of this in our hallway. So it was an incredible shot, a lot of work. This is delicate Ionopsis. Donna found one of these, is it 11 years ago now? 11 or 12 years ago. It's still doing great. So we have records on that almost, I missed 2 or 3 years. So 8 out of 11 years, we've documented how many flowers it made and how many seed pods. So we're actually getting some good science data. This is in the wild. We're not doing anything to help it. This is a wild plant. But she found it 11 or 12 years ago. Delicate Ionopsis. It's also called Ionopsis utricularioides. Remember, oides means looks like? Utricularia. The flowers look like the flowers of utricularia, which are bladderwort, the carnivorous plant. This, I don't like the common name. I can spit with this. Epidendrum anceps is the old Latin name. Now it's Epidendrum amphistosum, much longer name. I still go by the old name. They keep changing the names on me. The Latin name is that, but what's the common name? Oh, got it. Dingy star orchid. You have got to spit after calling one of our native, endangered, epiphytic orchids that looks that beautiful dingy? I don't get it. I'm being anthropomorphic, but that's what a lot of us people do as conservationists. We have to have a relationship with nature. And being anthropomorphic is how we can do that. As a biologist, I'm not allowed to, which is why I do it. I love being obstinate. Same thing with these slides. You're not supposed to leave a slide on more than 10 or 20 seconds. Have you guys noticed how much rules I break? Because when we were taught interpretation in the Florida Park Service, I think they told us don't leave a slide on more than 10, 15, 20 seconds. No, that is an insult to my audience's attention span. It takes me far longer than 10 or 15 seconds to explain the phenomenon that nature took thousands of generations to create. It might take a minute for me to delve into it and skim the surface of what little I know about a plant that's thousands of generations old. So you'll notice that I'll stick for a minute or two because I will not do that to your attention span. You guys can handle this. That is a slough again. Remember, a slough is, by my definition, a seasonally flowing stream embedded within the matrix, known as a strand swamp. That's a valley. The valleys are only about 18 inches deep. Right around September 20th is peak water level, give or take 10 days. And the bottom out is around May 1st, give or take 10 or 20 days. So when I'm giving you these maximum water depths, they're about September 20th. So 1.5 feet is about the maximum depth of a strand swamp where the bald cypress holds sway. The Potash Pond Apple sloughs, which are the streams growing through that strand swamp, start at 18 inches. That's a shallow one. They get up to 3.5 feet. That's if you're not in a hole. Once you get into a hole, you're going to go to 4 feet. That's the deeper sloughs, which you've seen some of. That one gets about 3 to 3.5 feet deep, 3.5 in some of the holes. That's where the good stuff is, the jewels. The epiphytes are there. The orchids, the ferns, the bromeliads, and peperomias from the tropics are over there because it's a bubble of humidity. The water, it's the physics of water. The physics of water elevates the dew point above freezing. So when a frost does come to Southwest Florida, which does happen occasionally, the water is so saturated air for the bottom 10 feet, from 10 feet above ground to ground level, that it saturates and elevates and holds that dew point above 32. Also, it prevents it from fire occurring because the moisture is too much moisture in the muck because of wicking itself up by capillary action. And also, it's preventing desiccation. That's that multi-tiered canopy, the wicking of the moisture and the transpiration from the living plants. They call it evapotranspiration. It's evaporation, which is physical, and transpiration was biological, botanical. This was Karen again. She got a picture at our boardwalk. Remember the 215 acres of old-growth bald cypress, the Norris Tract. There's a boardwalk there. She got this picture because she was there to clean up the garbage at the boardwalk. That was her duty as an OPS park ranger. And got this picture of, and I'm not sure if it's a peninsula cooter or a Florida red belly, but it's a native water turtle being eaten by, and I said, how big is that gator? She said, it's at least 7 feet. It might be 8. It's one of those 7 or 8 footers. You'll notice lots of teeth. This happens occasionally. Most of the time, the alligators don't get these turtles. The turtle shell is such that the shape of the shell and the thickness is usually enough to, it just squirts out like a watermelon seed, but not always. So somebody did their master's thesis, and they found the Florida red belly. If it goes up beyond the range of the alligator, the shell is thinner over geological time. And then when you get down to the range of the alligator, the shell gets thicker. So it's not just the thickness, but the shape of that shell. This is the Florida red belly, or further north, it's a different subspecies, but a red belly. And that might be what this is. This is Florida malaxis, or adder's mouth. Florida malaxis, Malaxis spicata. It grows on floating logs. And Donna, didn't you say that was the one that we should call the dingy? It's just such a tiny little thing. It does look a little bit dingy.
Stiff.
Oh, the stiffly. Okay, that's another one. Anyway, they're cute little things. There's not much to them. You really got to get up close to them. And this was Rita. Rita Bauer took these pictures. She's incredible with a camera. Most all these pictures are not by me. I'm the biologist. I just interpret. This is Florida butterfly, Encyclia tampensis. It's named after Tampa Bay. It was discovered around 1795 near Tampa Bay. It's also in the Bahamas. It's the only 2 places in the world you can find it. Otherwise, it would be endemic only to Florida. Encyclia tampensis. And you guys have them here. They bloom mainly in April, May, June, I think. Same thing at Fakahatchee, April, May, June. Beautiful. I haven't seen as many seed pods this year, but we do kind of track that kind of thing. I love the spray on this one. Just a spray of flowers of butterfly orchid. Encyclia tampensis. Whenever you're out there at Fakahatchee, there's always raptors watching. This is the most common of our raptors, at least the daytime raptors. That's the red-shouldered hawk. They are very common, doing good. This is a Florida clamshell orchid, Encyclia cochleata. They changed the name, of course. Now it's Prostichia. I feel like I'm spitting. Prostichia cochleata variety Triandra. I like Encyclia, it just rolls off the tongue. But we call it the Florida clamshell orchid, and I think, what was it? Me and Russ and Bobby came up with an ad hoc common name revision committee because they're always changing these Latin names. So I'm thinking, why don't we have a common name revision committee? Because it gets too confusing. But that's the problem with common names. There's too many of them. They change all the time by region. So we thought we'd call it the Little Red Riding Hood orchid or the lunar module orchid. So it looks like a lunar module blasting off. We just have a good time with these names. We don't care what you call it as long as you want to conserve it. The name of the game is CPR. It's all about conservation. And that's all different shots showing the buds, the flowers, the seed pods. The seeds of orchids are the tiniest in the plant kingdom. The Orchidaceae is the largest, one of the largest families in the plant kingdom. Something like 25 to 30,000 known species in the wild. We're not counting the 100,000 plus that have been hybridized by humans. Just in the wild, created by nature, it's 25 to 30,000. How many plants are there? No. 300,000? 10% of all known plant species on the planet are orchids by species. 30,000 out of about 300,000. It's incredible. Wild cocoa, it looks like a rabbit or a wild hare. Those ears coming up. That's Eulophia alta. You have that here too in Brevard County. It gets very tall, 3 feet, maybe even 4 feet tall, that flower spike, that inflorescence. It's a large flower, blooms mainly in October, November. So yeah, a little bit longer. And that's an up close of the picture of the flower that is. Frosted flower orchid is Pleurothallus gelida. They call it Stellus gelida now. A little easier, I guess. And that is very rare. In my 30 winters surveying there with a group of a lot of different people helping over those years, we saw way under 100. I would say 70, maybe 80. It gives you an idea of the rarity. Less than 100 in 30 winters of exploring. Pleurothallus gelida. And we threw another clamshell orchid in here. I guess I just couldn't resist. I love those little things. And then this is the night-scented orchid. They call it the night-scented orchid because it emits its odor at night. And that's because there's a pollinator down in the tropics where it originated from, in South America and Central America, that flies at night. So there are several species of moths that fly at night that pollinate this, not up here. No pollinators are known for the night-scented orchid. The orchid continues to release its odor at night, but they don't get pollinated here. They're self-fertile, autochthonous, or cleistogamous. If they don't open, they're cleistogamous. If they do, then they're autochthonous. The ones that do open are still autochthonous. They're self-fertile, self-fertilizing. But they still do release their odor in the nighttime. In the daytime, it doesn't do them any good. They're kind of pre-programmed genetically to emit that odor at night because the moths fly mainly at night. Genetic variability, though, there's always going to be some that are going to be variable, and there might be some that are going to emit their odor in the daytime. I have smelled quite a few, and I don't notice much of an odor, but I'm out there in the daytime. And we were talking about how tiny the seeds are. Orchid seeds are the tiniest in the plant kingdom. Right about 600,000 seeds is a gram. So it gives you an idea of just how tiny. The lightest, tiniest seeds in the orchid in the plant kingdom. So
Dust.
that's just dust, yeah, being blown on the wind. Remember that wind-mediated seed dispersal? These guys are the champions at wind-mediated seed dispersal. The problem is anything in the wild and nature, when you're really good at something, it means you gave up something else to get that good because there's always that zero sum going on. So what orchid family did was give up endosperm. They don't have endosperm. That's why they're so light. So they're very good. They have frequent flyer miles. They're able to go very far, but when they land, they don't have endosperm. The endosperm in all the other plant families is what charges the food for the developing embryo. Orchids have another trick. They have to land on the right type of fungus. They call it mycorrhizae, fungus root. So if they land on the wrong fungus, which I kind of feel most of the time they do, that fungus will consume that seed. But if they land on the right fungus, and there may only be several species of fungi for any given species of orchid that is the right fungus to set up a mycorrhizal association. The fungus infects the seed kind of uses the fungus too. So they're both using each other, creating eventually kind of a mutualism, symbiosis. They call it endosymbionts if they're inside the roots, ectosymbiotic if it's outside the roots. There's a whole bunch going on with orchids and fungi. Without fungi, remember fungi are a totally different plant kingdom. They're more closely related to animals than plants. So the fungi is a totally different kingdom. Without the kingdom of fungi, orchids couldn't have gotten away with this trick of losing the endosperm. That's why they were able to get away with it, because they can land on the right fungi sometimes. This is why they have to make so many seeds. The vast majority of the seeds, just by chance, don't land on the right fungus. It's a numbers game. Orchids, like everything else in nature, is playing the lottery. Make so many that at least a few survive. That's all plants and animals are doing. They're playing the lottery. And so that's what we're trying to do, to show how tiny those seeds are. Vanilla orchid seeds are really heavy. Instead of 600,000 seeds per gram, it's like 300,000. So that's very heavy for an orchid, but still tiny. The helmet orchid, the yellow helmet orchid is Polystakia concreta. That is state listed threatened, and you even see those in the mangrove zone down the estuary at 10,000 Islands. And they have conocarpus, the buttonwood. They're on buttonwood down there, and up on pop ash and pond apple in the freshwater strand swamp. This one is really cool, the Florida star orchid, or Epidendrum floridense now. It is unique to Florida. I think it's unique or an endemic. It used to be difforme, but that one has changed. This one is now floridense. And it's an emerald green, kind of a translucent color. You can kind of see right through it. That has become very rare. I think I saw 60, maybe 70 in 30 years. However, not too long ago, we went to a waypoint. And the new biologist from Estero Bay Aquatic Preserve went to that waypoint just a month or two ago and found 70 or 80 young ones. So I've never seen that. I've only seen 70 in 30 years. These were young ones, and I think 10 years ago they had 10 or 20 adults. So we're trying to get back to that site and just see. I'm just happy to see they're still there after 10 years. That was 2016. We finally got back to the site in 2026, so 10 years later. So that's now, with the advent of GPSs, that's what we're able to do. We can go back and try to find out how long do these populations last. Some of them last for quite a while. This is another very rare one, Epidendrum, was it Canopsium, the twisted or cone-bearing orchid. It's not a lot to look at when it's up there. Somebody asked me, when does it bloom? When it was in full raging bloom. These are just tiny little flowers. It harkens back to what I said earlier about the human mind likes things that are rare. And so it doesn't have to necessarily be, in your face beautiful, just something that's really rare. And that's the emeralds that we're looking for out there. It's a living organism that has figured out a way to survive in this brutal world. So it deserves our respect. It's not necessarily beautiful, but it's an organism that is surviving, has found a niche. And I love this shot. Dennis got this for me from the internet. It shows you the southern end of the United States, the upper end of South America, the Caribbean in between, Cuba with that gigantic island. A lot of these plants got here by hurricanes, hop-skipping their way over centuries. It was island hopping. And many of them would have been by bird migration as well. I think the next one shows a ruddy daggerwing. My favorite butterfly is a ruddy daggerwing. When Ken Alvarez showed me my first one, we were hiking to East Lake, and we saw this bright orange butterfly go by. And I said, wow, what is that, Ken? He said, oh, that's a ruddy daggerwing. Oh, wow, that's cool. And he says, oh, yeah. And then I saw it disappear. He says, oh, yeah, they do that. He landed upside down on a leaf, and he'll fold up his wings, and on the underside of the wings, they look like a dead leaf. And he's saying this to me so matter-of-factly and deadpan. It's like, what? We have a butterfly that's bright orange with powerful flight, flitting around like a bat, and then he can completely disappear like, what is that Star Trek ship? Klingon warship that has the cloaking device? And so I'm thinking, oh, no. So I'm getting all excited. So to me, that's the cloaking device butterfly. No, not of it cloaking, but you can see that they look like a leaf, like a dead leaf. But it's not just what they look like, it's their behavior. They hang upside down like a dead leaf when they want to disappear. This is a mule ear orchid in Everglades National Park. Saul got this picture. I did not lift up that net for long. As soon as he was done with that picture, that net went back. That was Everglades National Park in the summer, I believe, probably around 2005. 6, 7, something like that. The mosquitoes are horrendous there in the southern end of Everglades National Park. But that's where these jewels are, and they bloom in the summer. Our leafy vanilla ties the record for the largest native orchid flower in the United States. It's gigantic, Vanilla phantha. There is another orchid equal in size. It's a terrestrial up in the Northeast. I don't know what state, maybe several states. One of the lady slippers that's equal in size to our leafy vanilla. Big, beautiful yellow flower, very tubular. This is one of our lost orchids. It's called the rat-tailed orchid. Somebody said, Mike, but I thought you told me you got to be careful about what we call our orchids. If you want to get people interested in conservation, why are you using rat-tail orchid? Well, first of all, it is not my common name. I'm just sticking with it because it is appropriate. It does look like a rat tail when that thing's hanging down, but it's got cute little flecks of pink on the tail. It's the rat-tail orchid. What do they call this? Bulbophyllum pachyrhacus, thick root or thick something for rachis, the rachis of the flower stalk, I guess. And that's now in Cuba and many other tropical countries. We lost ours. They were poached out in the 60s or very early 70s. And same thing with this one, Epidendrum acuñae. Acuñae star orchid was found in Fakahatchee. The only place in the United States those two species of tropical orchids have ever been found is Fakahatchee Strand. And we haven't been able to see this one since 1980. Sonny Bass saw it in 1980 in the Fakahatchee. We have been back to that site a few times. We never know exactly if it's the site, but we get close within a few acres. There was no GPS in 1980, so we don't know. But that's two that we'd like to bring back by getting seeds from Cuba. We've worked on it with the rat-tail orchid. We got permits from USDA and eventually from the government of Cuba to get the seeds here, and Atlanta Botanical Gardens has been raising them. They've had them about 10 years. We should still have plenty left. It takes time to get this international botanical collaboration to take place, but eventually we'll get that and then start with this one too. So that's two of our lost orchids. The cowhorn orchid is also in Cuba, and they call it the bee swarm orchid also because when it's blooming, it looks like a swarm of bees. It's incredible. When I was first shown this plant, I didn't see it in bloom. It was in March of 1994. The biologist up there at the Panther Refuge, the upper 5 miles of the Fakahatchee Strand is the Florida Panther National Wildlife Refuge north of the interstate. The Fakahatchee Strand Preserve State Park is the southern 15 miles. The whole strand is over 20 miles long. I tell people it's such a large strand swamp, it takes 2 agencies to manage it. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for the Florida Panther National Wildlife Refuge and the Florida Park Service for Fakahatchee Strand Preserve State Park. And so we have it in Fakahatchee, but they have it up there at the Panther Refuge. When I came upon the plant, he's showing it to me, I said, Larry, there's got to be some mistake. This is not an orchid, this is a palm tree. I had no idea an orchid could get this robust. When you look at just the leaves even, I mean, they fan out like little palm trees. It's incredible. They can weigh several pounds. Certopodium punctatum, the cowhorn or cigar orchid. They too are in Cuba. We did a restoration project. The seed pod is the size of a small fist. There are 3 million seeds in one pod. Gives you an idea of the chances of success for any one seed. It's not likely, is it? That's why the plant has to make 3 million seeds in a pod. It's not going to make very many pods in its lifetime. There's a certain species of, insect, a carpenter bee of some sort that pollinates this. It appears to be only one species. And they're a lot more common in the Everglades National Park region than they are in Southwest Florida. We only saw it on one plant created by the wild. The rest of the pods we formed by hand pollinating during a project. So we have to get permits to be able to intervene like that. And then through Atlanta Botanical Gardens and other agencies and permits, we were able to reintroduce from known parents that we had to find over many years. We introduced 1,000 2-year-old plants over the course of 5 years. And now, of those 1,000 outplanted plants of cowhorn orchids, very endangered, about 200 are alive, 150 to 200. And of that, a decent number actually bloom. So we're going to go back there again later this month and do some surveying with Dr. Hong Lu and Dennis to find out how many. We're not going to be able to get to the 200. We're going to see as many as we can in one day and keep doing that every year in April or May. Laban LaBeouf. Laban LaBeouf came in 1996 to explain to me and try to share some of the locations where he used to take orchids before Fakahatchee was a preserve. He was there in the late 60s. He said, Mike, I had to admit, we used to take orchids, but I didn't take everything. We'd come to a spot, and I would just take 1 or 2 of this species, 1 or 2 of this. You know, he was trying to raise them. He later became an orchid judge, and he ended up going to South America to do a lot more collecting of orchids down there. So that's why he came back. He wanted to share his knowledge of orchids and of where the rare orchids used to be in Fakahatchee. And we tried for 2 or 3 different places, and all of those places, the orchids had died. One of them, we think, was a major fire that came through in the mid-'80s. But he was in Fakahatchee from the mid to late 60s. I think he was done by about 71 or 2 and then ended up going to South America. So that's why I always include Laban LaBeouf. He was so nice to come back over several years and give me as much of his knowledge of orchids. He's an orchid judge. This guy knows his orchids. Laban LaBeouf. This is Peperomia glabella, a very rare peperomia. Peperomia is in the Piperaceae. It's a pepper, totally different family. We have 5 species of peperomias in Fakahatchee. That's on a pond apple there. That pond apple is probably 200 plus years old, growing in a slough, potash pond apple slough. This is Karen. Remember I spoke about her? She's the one that got the picture at the boardwalk of the 215 acres of old growth where you had the 7 or 8 foot alligator getting the whatever turtle it is, peninsula cooter or Florida red belly. She found this orchid back in, what was it, 2004? Yep, 2004, January. We were all exploring, about 5 or 6 of us. I was in a slough documenting one of those rare orchids, Epidendrum stroboliferum, really cool and rare. And then Karen's in some shallow area, it wasn't even a slough, with a log. And she said, Mike, when you get a chance, you might want to come look at this. See, she had seen enough to know that what she was seeing, she had never seen before. So it turns out I didn't know what it was. I said, I'm not sure, Karen, there's 37 of them blooming on that log. So I collected 1, knowing that that would become an herbarium voucher specimen at USF eventually. And when we got back to the road with this 1 specimen, Russ Klussman, who's on the next slide, had Paul Martin Brown's Wild Orchids of Florida book, which, Martha, you have that blue one too. And that's what Russ had. And we looked at it, and sure enough, it was Cranicus muscosa, the moss-loving Cranicus. The rest of the story is, in the United States, no one had seen it since 1905. 99 years, the moss-loving Cranicus orchid was hiding in one of the best places to hide, the largest strand in the world, Fakahatchee Strand, for 99 years. So Karen found that because she became very familiar with what normal was. And I didn't know what it was. I said, I think it's an orchid, but I didn't know what kind. And we got the specimen. I don't know where it ended up. It was supposed to end up at USF. I thought I got it to the district herbarium. So we're still looking for my specimen. It could be in my herbarium at Fakahatchee. Wherever it is, it's safe. So we got to figure out where that is. Oh, and here's a professional picture, or maybe it's the next one. Oh, that was it. The one there, that was by Rick Cruz. So that's the moss-loving Cranicus, 99 years. We have since found it in, I think, 3 other places. Virla and Rudy have found it in one place, and they share the locations with us. So that's what happened with the advent of GPS. People will find these things, and then they share that with the biologist. And sometimes they would take me out there so I could get notes and pictures or whatever. So that's kind of fun, too, is to be able to go to these places that other people find. They go out exploring for these wild treasures or jewels. This, again, you guessed it, a slough, Potash Pond Apple Slough, a seasonally flowing stream within the valley of a strand. The strand is a valley. It peaks at 18 inches. Sloughs start at 18 inches, and they can peak at 3.5 or even 4 feet. Then that's the rigid orchid. Donna says that's the one. If there's any of them going to be called dingy, it would be that one. It's a cute little green flower, and it is Epidendrum rigidum, or the rigid orchid. It's state listed endangered, but in Fakahatchee, they're doing great. There's plenty of water, plenty of canopy, plenty of muck. This is the jingle bell orchid, or threadroot orchid. It is leafless. This orchid doesn't even have leaves. It is roots with chlorophyll. Fascinating. It's amazing, the creatures on this planet and how much time they've had to come up with these different adaptations to their niche. And that's the thread root. Tiny little yellow flowers, 3 millimeters, 1/8 of an inch. Very tiny. So not a lot of poaching pressure on the thread root orchid. It's not big and gaudy. It's a little 1/8 of an inch. The next one is the tooth petal orchid, another terrestrial. It has a big wand of flowers. That's still very common. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And that's Zeuxine stratomatica, the Asian lawn orchid, not native. That was not. We just thought we'd better show you. Here's another one of our leafless orchids called the ribbon orchid. The thing at the bottom there is the root, or the top rather is the root. The bottom is one leaf. It's called a vestigial leaf. Some of the leafless orchids actually have a vestigial leaf when they're young. It's a little bit of a solar cell with chlorophyll accelerating their rate of growth. But remember, like all orchids, epiphytic or terrestrial, all orchids require being infected by the correct fungus because they gave up endosperm. They don't have it. So they have to be totally dependent on the right fungus. Any orchid you see in the wild anywhere in the world, terrestrial or epiphyte, had to be infected by the proper mycorrhizae or fungus root. Isn't that amazing? Very few things in biology can you say all, but that's our knowledge right now. If it's in the wild, epiphytic or terrestrial, it had to be infected by the right fungus just to get started, because there's no endosperm for that embryo. Yeah. It's cool. And so most everything else has that endosperm, not the orchid family though. They call it, what do they call it? We're diploid. It's triploid because it's double fertilization. It's incredible. But endosperm is triploid. Our cells are diploid. Two cells together make diploid. Your endosperm is triploid. That's the food for the seed, for the growing embryo. This is the ribbon orchid without the leaf, without the vestigial leaf, with seed pods. We call them little tiny bananas. They're little green bananas. Those are seed pods. There could easily be 10,000 seeds per pod in those little ribbon orchids. They're flat green ribbons with chlorophyll, flat green roots with chlorophyll. This is the ghost orchid with a vestigial leaf. Note the white dash lines. And they're not flat like a ribbon. These are more like a rope or a shoestring. So they're more rounded. The next one should show it. Yeah. That's a much larger ghost orchid on a pond apple with some old spikes and some resurrection fern. A lot of these epiphytic ferns help hold in the moisture, we think, too, for the orchid. You can see the white dash lines. It gives it the divided highway effect on the ghost orchid. The ribbon orchid is just a flat green orchid. The ghost orchid is not flat, and it has white dash lines. And it has bright green, shiny growing tips. Shows you the size. That's a very healthy ghost orchid. Root system, you can see how they're roots with chlorophyll. And this one was ghost orchid #1. It attempted to bloom in the year 2000, and it did not succeed to make its first flower ever. In 01, it made 1 flower. 02, it made 2. And in 03, it made 3 flowers. And this is a quote from Dr. Carl Lure's book, The Native Orchids of Florida, published in 1972 by the New York Botanical Garden. They also quoted this in the movie, not The Orchid Thief, that's the book, but in the movie adaptation. And I don't know if anybody can put into words the bloom of a ghost orchid better than Dr. Carl Lure. It is like a fairy-like ghost caught in flight. This was the billy ghost. We had 2 of them blooming at the same time. It actually had 2 seed pods when we found the billy ghost. And I think over 3 years, it made 2, 1, 2. Made 5 seed pods in 3 years. After about the 4th or 5th year, it died. That seems to be what happens for many ghost orchids. They make a lot of flowers. Some of them even make seed pods for the last 3 to 5 years, and then they die. And you can see the variations on the theme of ghost orchids. That beautiful white flower. The petals are just all really weird. Jay Staten has a time lapse of it. I have that on another program. We'll do that another time. It's not on this one. This is Karen holding one of the giant sphinx moths up to the ghost orchid. It has a proboscis, the tongue 6 1/4 inches long. The wingspan of the giant sphinx is 6 inches. They call it the flying tongue. The proboscis is longer than the wingspan. We used to think that was the only pollinator of the ghost orchid. We now know better because several people got funding and cameras from National Geographic to go to Corkscrew Swamp Audubon Sanctuary and follow the super ghost, and then Florida Panther National Wildlife Refuge. And they've discovered there are at least 3 other sphinx moths that visit and potentially pollinate the ghost orchid. When we were discovering that, one of the reporters called me from Tampa Bay Tribune, was it, or Tampa Bay Times, and said, Mike, how do you feel about this? He knew my story was the only known pollinator was John. I said, oh, no, I like that. This is great. Whenever you have an endangered plant or animal, you don't want it to be a specialist because it's much more likely to go extinct. Specialists are probably the first to go. You want there to be interdependence. You want there to be backups. So a lot of redundancy in a lot of ecological systems. So once we found out there was more than the giant sphinx moth, we were glad. From an ecology point of view, you want that. We didn't know that before because we didn't have evidence. And biologists are not allowed to go beyond the evidence. So that's why we kept saying the only known pollinator was the giant sphinx. Yeah, I just won't show it. But that's it, from the spike to a bud to finally opening, and then you get a green pod, and this one got pollinated, and you can see the brown seeds coming out, 600,000 to a gram. So that's just one that got pollinated. He calls it stages, Jay Staten. He's taken a lot of pictures of the ghost orchid. This was, Dennis got this way up at the Panther Refuge, the northern end of Fakahatchee. We saw one up there growing on poison ivy. So ghost orchids can grow on a lot of different things. About 80% of them are on potash, about 20, 25% are on pond apples. And this was Jay Staton's ghost. I just love that one coming out from the side, being very ghostly. And you can see the variations on the ghost orchid theme. They are just all different shapes. This is Franklin Adams. He's the one that took Melfin into Fakahatchee in 1961. And so we have him to thank. And then you have Oscar Thompson on the left, and sitting in the water is Clyde Butcher. I remember that day, I'm thinking, well, where's Clyde? I was getting ready to talk to him. Oh, there he is. He's down in the water. They tell me he loves getting into his work. So that was Clyde. Then we had the article in the New Yorker from the orchid poaching case, which occurred in December of '93. And then the orchid thief happened a few years later by Susan Orlean. And then we had the movie later on called Adaptation. Meryl Streep, Nicolas Cage, and Chris Cooper. Chris Cooper got the Oscar, I guess, for his portrayal of the orchid thief, John LaRoche. And this is George, and he's got a Burmese boa constrictor. Just shows you the problems we're having in the Everglades region. There's always something going on. And so we're dealing with Burmese pythons and even boa constrictors. This is George Wilder, PhD botanist, taught me a whole lot of botany. And this is a crocodile, an American crocodile. The white teeth are just incredible. This is Dennis Giardina. Let me have that picture again near the Marco Island Airport. And this was Panther Posse. This is Ricky Piers with FGCU, Wings of Hope. She said there's actually 3 babies. Only 2 got caught in that picture. But she gave me that picture to use too. And then I love this quote from Wilderness Conservation book. Exposure to wilderness, however casual or however intense, directly or vicariously, can be a doorway to the ecological understanding of our utter interdependence with our environment and with life everywhere. I don't know if there's a statement that's any better than that. That's also another rule. You don't ever read or put words, that many words on a slide. Well, you know what I'm going to do. And I never got to meet either of those guys, but wow, that is the synopsis of CPR to me. Wilderness. That's what reminds us of how interdependent and interrelated we are. We are one with the world. We really, literally, physically are. And that's Cousteau's slough. It's a slough that's so deep we should be snorkeling in it. Dennis is all the way on the right. Rick Cruz, who ruined the Fuzzy Wuzzy for me, is to his right. And then Mike Duver, wetlands ecologist extraordinaire. The reason I'm able to talk with some amount of authority on hydrology is because of Mike Duver, Dr. Mike Duver. And Gene McCullum and Ralph Arwood. You saw the Panther, #2 shot. That was Ralph Arwood. And then you see Donna and I on the right. That's Jay Staton's son, too, right in front of Gene McCullum. So we always have to throw in some personal stuff, but we call it Cousteau Slough. It's so deep, you should be snorkeling in the slough. And then I always try to end it with water. The most important resource we've got, other than biodiversity, is water. You can live without gold. Life does not need gold. But all life needs, at some stage of its life, liquid water. So that's how valuable water is. It blows away gold. You can't have life without it. And that's the ending. Happy trails. A guy named Mike, I forget his last name, showed me this picture and gave it to me of a black bear and a Florida panther meeting at Fakahatchee. And I said, Mike, what is this? One panther or a bear wasn't enough? You have to get both in one shot? That's an overachiever. So I have to end everything with that one. So happy trails. Thanks for your attention. Thanks so much. I appreciate that. I didn't have time for questions. I took up too much time. Yeah, thank you.
A better program to have here, and I hope you all enjoyed it.
Awesome. Thank you.